Hello, are you speaking? You are muted.
Oh my God. Sorry about that. So hello everyone, my name is Kello and I'm one of the campaign coordinators for COP26. Welcome and thank you for taking our time to join this section. In this section, we'll be talking with some of the powerful youth activists who will be sharing their experiences attending COP26 and some of the best practices. On the panel, we have Maria Clara, the global focal point of Yongo. We have Shreya and Elizabeth joining us to share some of the best practices and the experience uh, attending previous COPs. And I think I will have to give them 1 or 2 minutes to introduce themselves and then we can proceed. Uh, Maria Clara, can you please go first and then Shreya, Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you so much, Kayla, and everyone else who was involved. It's a great pleasure to be here today with you. As already mentioned, my name is Marie-Claire Graf. I am from Switzerland, and I'm currently the elected global focal point together with Hita Lakhani from India for Yango. Yango is the youth constituency, the children and youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So basically, it's an international network of young people who are trying, as we are also in MOCOP. I'm also part of MOCOP. I was participating in the conference. We're trying to influence the international climate policy processes in the view of what young people want. So in Yango, we have various working groups working on different areas. But moreover, for the last COP25, I was also a negotiator for Switzerland. Where I was covering topics around climate education, under the Action for Climate Empowerment, topics related to gender, topics related to technology transfer and capacity building. And I was the youngest ever negotiator for Switzerland. And I'm looking very much forward to have more young negotiators part of the negotiation team so we can actually really sit at the tables in the negotiations. But yeah, looking very much forward, and over to you, Kilo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria. That is a powerful you got there. Shreya, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Hello. Hello, everyone. Namaste. My name is Shreya. I'm from Nepal. I work as network coordinator for Nepalese Youth for Climate Action, which is a youth-based network. Now I'm working as campaign champion of UNICEF South Asia. So yeah, I look forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Shreya. And Elizabeth, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do?
Thank you so much, Kello. And it's good to be here. It's good to see Mari and Shreya. We are all part of the Children and Youth constituency to the UNFCCC. As rightfully said, my name is Elizabeth Kulugulu. I'm based in Zimbabwe, which is in the southern part of Africa. I work for an organization called the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change here in Zimbabwe. And I also, like I initially indicated, that I'm a member of YUNGO, and I call it the Agriculture Working Group. Currently now, co-leading the NDCs working group. Last year at COP25, I was following Coronivia Joint Workforce on Agriculture. These are issues that are really, really close to my heart because we are often affected by droughts year in and year out. And it is quite important for us young people to come up with innovative solutions, sustainable solutions for our food systems. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you to all our panelists for taking our time to join us today. For our attendees, you can please introduce yourself in the chat and just stay tuned. I think I'll have to start with Maria. Maria, you've obviously attended COP as a negotiator. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience attending COP, and do you feel that you're listened to and respected in the process?
Yeah, thanks so much. And it was indeed the first time. I have been attending already various COPs, back the one in Bonn and then in Poland and then in Madrid. We were planning to go to Chile and I didn't actually want to go, but then suddenly I got a call from the ministry if I want to support them as a negotiator. And I was like, okay, this is weird. I haven't been thinking about this. And then I took the opportunity because otherwise some of the topics around climate education, I couldn't, Switzerland wouldn't have been following. So it was a chance to actually bring these topics to the table and that I could actually follow the topics I love to follow, right? But now from the other side of the table, so not as youth activists, but part of the government. And as you already mentioned, it's a very different role. So you cannot just say whatever I as a person think. When you're a youth activist, you can stand up, you can protest, you can, you have like way more freedom. But if you are then on a governmental badge, you have to follow certain rules and procedures and everything. So you're less free, but you have another role. And I think this is, if we have more young people like sitting on the other side of the table, we can also be more strategic on how we bring our points across. And then, I mean, everything got shifted very, very like quickly from Chile to Madrid, which was of course better for me, so I could go by train. But it was also, it was quite hectic because so many things suddenly changed. And as mentioned, it was the first time for me being there as a negotiator. And while I have been attending COPs already, it was a whole different kind of approach how I was going there. It's like I had to prepare myself differently. There was like a governmental mandate and you had to write a position paper, how I can negotiate in the negotiation. I had to understand better what the other negotiators are talking about. So the whole process was, I mean, I had a great support from my government, but it was quite stressful. And then also when I was actually there, it was very, very intense. Also like following so many different topics on behalf of the government was not easy. And also what I think was very sad is that in the ACE negotiation, Action Climate Empowerment, there were some other young people, but otherwise I was pretty alone as a young person in the room, and also as a young female in the room. And I think this is something, we're also going to explore now in the call. And that's what we also commonly are demanding for. But I think it's very, very sad that, if there is like one young person in the room, it's not really empowering to bring the points across. Nevertheless, I could, because I had the network through Youngo, I could also strategize well in this regard. But we really, really need more young people from all parts of the world, like being there, so we are like one community, we can encourage each other, because otherwise like we are like still lonely voices sitting on the tables, right? The rest is still very dominant.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria. I definitely agree with you. There is need to have more young people on the negotiation team. And Shreya, can you you attended COP25? Can you tell us about your experience at COP25, and what do you think needs to change to make COP better?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kello, for that question. I got this incredible opportunity to participate in COP25 through the Youth Climate Scholarship. I was one of the 14 Youth Climate Scholars and also from the Youth for NDC team. COP25 was a very beautiful and yet different experience for me. I also got to attend the 15th Global Conference of Youth, COE15, which also, I think, from which also I practiced to fit myself in the negotiations and events for COP. At COP25, the first session I used to attend was the Youngo briefing session. That was quite helpful. And after that, I used to follow different negotiation items such as NDCs, common time frame, loss and damage, among others. Working under the NDC enhancement group, it was fun. And in rare high-level events, we youth were provided space to present our intervention, on which we used to share our opinions and also talk about our constructive suggestions. I was also the one who was kicked out from the COP venue on December 11 due to participating unintentionally in the protest. So I think that will be one of the most vivid memory of mine from COP25. But thankfully, they allowed us to enter the COP in the next session. And me and Zuzana from Poland, we gave the intervention on behalf of Youngo on the closing plenary of COP, where we expressed our dissatisfaction of COP25 and what we really expected in upcoming intersessionals that is happening now and COP. So I think to make COP better, we need a systematic change, because the solution does not come from the system that created that. And as Mary mentioned before, we need better leaders who realize the urgency of taking ambitious climate action. And for this, there is no one better than young people. So first I say is we need more young people as negotiators, the decision-making table, that helps to make the COP better. And also our leaders need to embrace the IPCC 1.5 degree report and raise global climate goals accordingly to that. Also, we need more females, more indigenous peoples and vulnerable peoples who are at the forefront, and they know the problems and they exactly know what the solutions are. So I think that is the things that we can do. Also, the major thing that we should do is we should have enough space for the observers' participation, and the negotiations should be transparent and fair. Everyone outside the room should know what is happening inside that closed room. Yes. So, and overall, the climate change issues should focus should also consider the issue of human rights issue and intergenerational justice issue. If we allow to include this perspective in our negotiations and climate change decision-making tables, I think that will really contribute and make a better and ambitious COP. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Shreya. Elizabeth, over to you. Can you tell us about your experience attending COP and what is your favorite part of the event?
Thank you so much. I so much concur with my colleagues, Mari and Shreya. I mean, especially from the global south, we really need young people who are capacitated to be negotiators. We are so much faced with so much monopoly and so much politics playing around within the government ministries and, youth organizations, etc., to the extent that if they are attending to COP number 1, there is lack of funding for young people. Number 2, even if there is funding, they make sure that they do not give young people party badges, they are given observer badges, which becomes so difficult for young people to follow the negotiations because they are not allowed to be inside the rooms. But in my case, our government, the government of Zimbabwe, has been so much accommodative. We are always given party badges so that at least if you want to follow any negotiated topics, we can. But then you cannot just wake up and start following a negotiated topic. I mean, these are technical issues which requires you to be educated first to understand what it means, what a clause means, what it means when they are quoting, when they are saying Article 6.4, what does that mean? When they say countries shall, countries should, what is the difference between that? So I think I would love to encourage different kinds of governments to at least try by all means to make sure that young people are capacitated, they are educated, especially when it comes to the COP processes, the diplomatic processes, the COP negotiations processes. I am so fortunate that I managed to attend COP23 in Bonn and COP25 in Madrid, and hopefully COP26 in Glasgow. But I'm also growing also in the circles. In my situation, through the platform of the Children and Youth Constituency, it has opened entry points for many young people. This is where a lot of young people can get the opportunity to learn about these processes. I mean, whether you're an observer or you're a negotiator, you still learn and you grow. So this year, I'm definitely will be a negotiator. Yeah, things change. Definitely, they have to change. And we have to keep on passing the baton stick to the young people because this is their future. They need to understand what it means to shape their future. They need to understand the importance of negotiations. I'm not saying being an observer is bad, it's not bad, but these are the serious issues that are going to shape our future tomorrow. And young people should be on board. If the opportunities are not given to them, then let's grab the opportunities by themselves. And this is a very good platform for young people to start learning about how they can access so many entry points to be part of the negotiations.
Yeah, thank you very much for that insightful response, Elizabeth. Maria, you already obviously have a lot of experience attending COP, as you mentioned, and then with COP25 being your first COP that you attended as a negotiator. What advice will you give to young people or people who will be attending COP26 as negotiators?
Yeah, I think I will follow up with what Elizabeth, what you mentioned. I mean, going there as a negotiator, you have also responsibility to your country, to the other young people who do not have this chance, right, to be there. And this is also how I saw it for me, because I was the first time they took a young person in the negotiation team. I was not there as a youth negotiator, I was there as a negotiator with all the benefits, but also the responsibilities. And this, of course, is a huge task, right? And I had very little time also to prepare, but suddenly you have to be there and understand all the jargons, understand all these different abbreviations. I mean, of course, I already was in this role before, but being there and now you have to proactively react, because as observers, very often you're not allowed to talk. So you're kind of listening there. And now you're there in a space where you can actually actively participate. And because I'm very intrinsically motivated to make the best out of it, it was also I myself put a huge pressure that I make the best out of it, and that I can really show my government that having a young person there is worth to take young people into the delegation. I wanted to be there also for other young people who do not have the chance. So what is really, really important is what Elizabeth mentioned. I mean, we need the capacity building and the technical capacity building to be able to bring our points across, because very often we have a certain aspiration we want to bring in, but we do not exactly know, including myself, how to articulate this and bring this into the language, right? That at the end it's getting accepted at the end by consensus, meaning all the 196 countries do agree on this, what I want. And it's sometimes it really depends on a comma. It depends on a small word. I might not even understand the difference between the two words, and it really happened. I mean, English is not my first language. English is my fifth language. So, but understanding like these tiny differences in the words, while sometimes countries are objecting, so you have to be kind of very fast. You have to be smart to kind of like build the alliances. You have to build your own capacity. You have to understand how like people on a very personal level are reacting, right? And maybe like a personal story also here. When I was a negotiator, so an older negotiator from a country of Europe came up to me. I can't remember what country it was. So and he was asking, can I talk to the negotiator of Switzerland? I was like, I'm the negotiator of Switzerland. We can have a chat. Let's take a seat and talk. He's like, no, I want to talk to the negotiator, not the secretary. And I was like, I'm the negotiator, so we can talk. I just repeated myself. So clearly he couldn't understand that the young female person can actually sit there as a negotiator. And I mean, this is not only the case here for Europe, this is the case as already shared by Shreya and Elizabeth for many parts of the world, that there is an perceived barrier. They think like, oh, this is a young person, a young female lady. She cannot know what this is. She can be like the best, the secretary to like the negotiators. And so we face a lot of these barriers. And I think especially we as young people have to overcome the technical ones, but then also these perceived barriers about our age, about our gender, that we have a lack of capacity and knowledge. And that's why we even more have to prepare ourselves and even more do this capacity building. And I had the great privilege to be able to do some negotiation trainings in advance. And I would really encourage whenever possible to also take some kind of negotiation trainings, because it's really, really, when you're there, it's really intimidating. Like you sit there in this circle with 196 countries, and then you have to raise your flag. And like, at least like my heart was like, oh my God, like I was starting sweating, like when I'm like messing up what is happening, right? So it was really good to have someone like also teaching me on like how to negotiate, like some basics, right? So I think it's important to prepare yourself as good as possible, but then also when you're there, like build up a network of people who are supporting you. Not only young people, but also other people who are, I had like brilliant, like older negotiators, right? They were like 60 and they were so happy that I was there and they supported me. I think it's really important to build these networks. The others also have their networks, very traditional ones, but maybe not really like ambitious and thought-provoking ones. That's why we have to have our own network. And that's actually, I think what also MOCOP or younger, what we are, can also be, we can be a network of young people who have the chances that they can make the best out of their positions. Additionally to like, of course, the rather like the technical trainings and having the hard facts, what you want to do. But the soft skills are very, very, very crucial to make it then happen.
Thank you very much, Maria. That was very insightful. Okay, Shreya, over to you. With COP25, how do you see the outcome? Are you pleased with the outcome of COP25?
Thank you for that question, Kello. No, I was not pleased with the outcomes of COP25. I was rather frustrated with the outcomes of COP25 because we are there with so much of hope and expectations. We're sitting late nights meetings, having different things, and like we are doing lots of things, but there was not the expected outcome. So I was really frustrated. I think Mary and Elizabeth, who are joining me here, were also the same. COP25 was also the longest COP ever. The countries agreed on few things such as the gender action plan, but there was several things that in which there was no agreement. And there was high hope for COP25 to make an agreement for the international carbon trade mechanism, that is the Article 6 of Paris Agreement, but there was no agreement on that, and there was no progress on loss and damage issues under the Warsaw International Mechanism of Loss and Damage. So there were several things that were not agreed, and even the civil societies were sought out at the COP25. That was like another drawback, I think, of COP25. So the outcomes was not really pleasant. It was frustrating, and also what I say is this COP25, because there were several agreements were not agreed, it has really like build a pressure on this COP26 to have agreements on lots of topics. And right now we are going through the pandemic time, and even during such emergency, the emergencies are not stopping. There are many climate-induced disasters that has been happening in Philippines, in Bangladesh, even in Nepal. So there's even more pressure in COP26. So with this, there is still a gap between what country is placed to do, what scientists say it is needed to avert the global climate catastrophe, and what really the leaders are doing in the global negotiations platform. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah. I personally agree with you. I personally feel also disappointed with the outcome of 25. And okay, over to you, Elizabeth. Last week ended the section on the subsidiary bodies. I personally, I think I have a very narrow idea of what the subsidiary body is. Can you please tell us what the subsidiary body is?
Okay, so these negotiations are still ongoing. Yes, thank you so much, Mary. I'm glad Mary is here and she's also been following the negotiations. I've been partly following because I had a tight schedule with also my school. These negotiations are still ongoing, and yes, there is an issue to do with inclusivity as well, making sure that the observers are also on board. We have also faced some situations where there are rooms when observers are not allowed. At least us as the children and youth constituency, they are quite a number of young people that are also part that were given observer badges through other organizations, and some that are on party badges. So we have a group that we have where we communicate, because each and every person will be following different kinds of topics. I'm mainly interested with Article 6 simply because we couldn't get to an agreement on Article 6 since COP24, COP25, and we are now going to COP26. So definitely we need to come to a certain understanding and conclude with this Article 6. Someone once said we cannot keep on moving Article 6 from COP to COP. Honestly speaking, it's not unfair, especially to us, the developing countries as well. So these negotiations are still ongoing. We have these subsidiary bodies which happen, I think it should be twice a year. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have decided to take them online, just trying to see how it's going. But also there are issues to do with technology. In some parts of the countries, you know, not everyone has access to Wi-Fi, not everyone has access to internet. And you find out that in as much as we want to be as very inclusive as we would want to be, these are some of the limiting factors that people do not have access to Wi-Fi. Even the timing itself, we've been sleeping late. I wouldn't want to lie. I think yesterday I slept at 2:30. It's usually 3 a.m. or 4, because we are trying to follow. If we don't do it, then we are sort of like letting our future down. So we have to be consistent. We have to be coordinated. There is need for coordination amongst us young people. There is need for good communications amongst us young people. There is need for us to be active and to make sure and to understand who is doing this task, who is following this task. Then we all consolidate. Meetings are shared each and every time. The meeting links, each and every day, meeting links are shared. So if you feel you are not an observer, but you would want to follow these issues, please do not hesitate to join the meeting so that you can at least be on track. Because these negotiations, of course, we are not going to reach to a conclusion, but these negotiations are going to shape the COP25 negotiations. So it's always good to be on board, to know who is doing this, to know what is going, maybe could it be loss and damage? Could it be Article 6? Could it be the NDCs? What is the current status? So in case I have left anything, I think I can leave this part even to Marie-Claire to add on the ESPs.
Could I quickly react?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elizabeth, for already covering a wide range. So as probably most of you know, I mean, we have like the big conference of the parties always at the end of the year. Normally like this takes place every year. And then in between, we have the subsidiary body meeting, basically the ones working on the implementation, the technical assistance that we can already prepare, because 2 weeks of negotiation, as already mentioned before by Shreya, I mean, last time was the longest ever conference, and the parties still couldn't meet. And I mean, it's impossible that we could find all the answers in these 2 weeks. That's why we have like this rather working session in between. For the very first time in the history of the the UNFCCC, it's happening online, which brings, as already mentioned by Elizabeth, a lot of new barriers. I mean, it's the internet access, it's the timing, but also, I mean, just like that for us young people, it's very hard sometimes to find our way. A lot of things are happening. You do not have this contact, right? No one can just drag you to a room and help you. We cannot drag or just kind of like pressure the negotiators. We cannot do direct actions, as Shreya already mentioned before. So a lot of barriers are additionally coming to us. And I think what is really relevant also for young people is like this very direct contact, also to be able to just speak, for example, to your country negotiator and tell them like, look, I do not agree with this, but I would love to hear this from you. And this bilateral, this personal conversations are completely missing. This was next to be a negotiator our biggest strength, because very often our voices are sidelined, and this is all not possible right now in this SB, and that's why I think it's also very, very relevant that like at COP25 we do have COP26 we do have young people like being there physically, because I do not believe that our voices will be equally heard if we are going to be there through online participation.
All right, thank you very much, Maria. Okay, Treya, can you just share a little bit about what you think the atmosphere of COP25 was? What was the atmosphere like, and was the biggest takeaway that you have from the event?
Yeah, so it is like COP has been for around 25 years. It is already 25 years that COP has been occurring. Yet when we look back on all the COPs that has been occurred, we only remember COP21. That is when Paris Agreement was done as only the good thing, so that everyone understands climate crisis as an existential threat. But when it comes to making ambitious targets, they often play the blame game. So it provides hope, like when we see the young people's working, fighting, intervening, lobbying. So all the efforts of young people, it really inspires hope. But when we go towards the real leaders, those who negotiate on behalf of our future, it is really frustrating. And in COP25, I personally believe observers played a quite important role, from organizing different action programs to make sure that people's voice are heard, and even the issues of human rights and indigenous peoples are taken with enough attention. And but also the civil societies was sought out at COP25. Our lives, our future, our children's life are in the hands of the leaders, but yet our leaders and COP has, I think, fail us and also the planet. So one thing I took from COP25 is we should not really rely we should not rely on our leaders for action. There is more and meaningful, ambitious actions that we can do in locally without even participating at COP. So, and there are also no overnight transitions nor silver bullet solutions that we are facing. But together, we need to continue with hope and belief, because we don't have any options left. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Treya. Okay, Elizabeth, just a quick question from you from the chat. How can we join the meetings to observe what is being talked about? I think it's talking about the subsidiary bodies. They want to know how they can join and observe what is being talked about.
Okay, you have to be accredited. It's either you're accredited through your organization, an organization that is accredited to the UNFCCC, or through your government. So there are different types of accreditation. It's either you're an observer or you're a party. There are a lot of different types of accreditation. So if you manage to get to be accredited, that's how you can join these sessions. Otherwise, if you're not accredited, there are also sometimes they normally share their live streaming links via YouTube, I'm sure. So they are also shared in case you are interested to follow these negotiations as they are going. But the most important thing is for you to be accredited.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Maria, please, can you talk a little bit about NDCs? I know NDCs is a very important concept in the climate movement. Can you please share a little light on the term NDCs?
Yeah, absolutely. So the NDCs, the acronym stands for National Determined Contribution. Maybe you cannot really like work with this as well, so just call it National Climate Action Plans. So basically, this is how the countries, what they agreed back at COP21 in 2015, so 6 years ago, or 5.5 years ago, what they agreed how we can implement this. Because as we all know, it's nice to have national international agreements, but if we do not have local actions, all the international agreements mean exactly nothing. So what we need is to nationalize and implement the Paris Agreement on a national level. And I'm very unfortunate today, the very first country in the world, Switzerland, voted on the national implementation of the Paris Agreement. And the votes are not yet all counted, but it actually looks that a very, very tiny majority is rejecting the national implementation of the Paris Agreement. So we are rejecting how we are implementing the Paris Agreement in Switzerland. This is very, very sad because this will throw us back like 5 years to find a political consensus. So that's why I'm also like outside, because I'm basically just next to the federal house, where like the parliament, where they are like just counting the votes now. But in general, I mean, this is now for Switzerland, but in general, it's very important. And I'm also very happy to see that some countries, unfortunately not Switzerland, but some other countries, Elizabeth can also talk about this, they have been working with young people to include their solutions in the NDCs, because at the end of the day, young people, we are half of the world's population. So if we do not work with young people on the implementation of the Paris Agreement, I mean, then we will never, ever get there. We are just like half of the world's population. We are the ones who are the best educated generation because we have been recently or still in school. We have access to the best education and the newest the technological possibilities. Also, young people are very often very like digitally and technologically reversed. So we understand very often how we could use this tool or how we could make use of the tools. So I'm very glad to see that more and more countries did include young people, at least in the drafting of the NDCs. And what I now want to see is that young people are actually also included in the implementation, like the action, that young people are included from the whole policy process. And this is the most important task we are going to have. And I completely, I think, Shreya, you mentioned it before. Of course, it's important to have international negotiations. And I think everyone is looking forward for COP26 when we can finalize some of the last agenda items. Nevertheless, we cannot wait until we have been finalizing our negotiations and until then we are not doing anything. We have to start. I mean, we should have started like already like 20 years ago, but we have to start with the national implementation like right now and really, really scaling up. And especially also now with the whole threat of COVID. And there is like so much money suddenly going into the economy. There is so much money suddenly available for new projects. And this money is very often, unfortunately, spent for a very old-fashioned fossil fuel-driven economic system, instead of having like now at least they're giving the money with some climate friendly conditions that, for example, you have to align with net zero targets, you have to align with a path to go to net zero. All of this in a lot of countries, unfortunately, is not put forward. And I think this is very, very important when we are now working on the NDCs. The NDCs, the national determined contributions, our national climate action plans are, to me, the core, the key we have to now focusing on, because we do not know if COP26 is going to happen the way we want it to happen, but nevertheless, we can now drive the national implementation, and we have to really focus on this.
Thank you very much, Maria, for that point. I spent the bulk amount of yesterday night going through the Nigerian NDC because I was trying to write meet with the Minister of Environment, and I needed to be very clear on what they've agreed to do. Okay, over to you, Shreya. Why do you think NDCs are important? And I know NDC is a very a key theme in the COP26 treaty. So why do you think NDCs is a very important part of the and why is it included in the COP26 treaty?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Kelo. As Mary mentioned before, NDCs are the climate action plan of all the country. It is the heart of the Paris Agreement, and because the NDCs is equal to the sum of all the global commitments that has been happening to meet the Paris Agreement. And the most recent report by IPCC also states how severe we are going to be impacted if we reach the 2 degrees Celsius temperature rise in this century. The recent report by UNEP on the emissions gap report also says, like, even if we are able to achieve all the committed targets under the NDC, we will only be 1/3 of the way towards achieving the Paris Agreement. So we can know that even achieving NDCs is also not is not the ultimate solution. And we are already tired of empty climate promises, and that is why we have created mock-up treaty. The mock-up treaty is made by the 330 plus young people of the world, and the concern and worry of the young people is reflected in the treaty, especially in the NDCs. We don't want NDCs to be full of loopholes and greenwashing solutions. And that is why we ask all countries NDCs to be fully aligned to limit global temperature to below 1.5 degrees. The plans need to take all the known greenhouse gas emissions into account. Commitments should prioritize the radical reduction in greenhouse gas emissions first and not involve offshoring of those. We also ask each country's NDC to spell out detailed plans and timelines for a whole of society energy transition away from the coal, oil, gas, and fossil fuels, which also includes the ban on future developments of fossil fuel reserves and a detailed action plan on the sound management of the life cycles of renewable energy equipment. So our targets outline the requirements of the NDC, and achieving the NDC targets is really important, and that really makes a difference. So that's why NDCs, all the, I'm not saying all the other treaties are not important. Other treaties are also equally important, but in this context, I say NDCs are more important.
Yeah, thank you, Shreya. And Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with NDCs? What work have you done in that respect?
Well, thank you so much. This is really my favorite topic to talk about because we are talking about how countries are coming up with plans on how they are going to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. This process should be very inclusive, should be very accommodative, and young people should take a lead because we are talking about plans, 2050 plans, 2030 plans. I mean, definitely young people should drive this because there are a lot of opportunities for young people. If we are talking about reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the agriculture sector, then what are we supposed to do? It means that we need to implement, or we have to consider practicing regenerative agriculture, agroecological practices, climate smart agriculture. And where do young people come in? Through the whole value chain, the agriculture value chain, young people should come in and see opportunities, green opportunities, as we are trying to build back better. Remember, we are recently affected by COVID-19. And we are still being affected by COVID-19, and we really need to build back better. And I'm sure our NDCs should also speak on how they are going to improve our health systems as well, because as the population is growing, we are slowly encroaching into some protected areas, and the more we are interacting with our biodiversity, with animals, there's a transfer of diseases, human and wildlife conflicts, a transfer of zoonotic diseases to human beings, and we are constantly being affected. So if our NDCs address those issues, it means that we are a resilient nation. It means that we have resilient nations. It means that we also have resilient citizens. Above all, we also have resilient young people who are driving this cause. So in my view, I see the NDCs as an opportunity for us young people. Let's not say they are too technical. Yes, they are too technical because they are guided by the IPCC, which is the scientific body for the UNFCCC, but this is our chance for us to understand, articulate, translate these issues, and also put our demands on the table that, you know what, as a group of young people, we feel like you're not being ambitious enough. We have to be ambitious enough. We need to come up with NDCs that are practical, that are implementable at the end of it all. So this is my experience. Basically, here in Zimbabwe, we did a number of consultations for 3 months. We have managed to reach out to more than 300 young people, and we have drafted our youth position paper, which we have translated to not only a position paper, but it's also now a policy brief, which we'll be submitting to our government in 2 weeks' time. So we are quite happy of the progress. We've been given an opportunity by UNDP under the Climate Promise Fund. We're quite happy because they've also been supporting other young people from different countries to do consultations with young people so that they understand. Capacity is important when it comes to NDCs, because we cannot start talking about NDCs without people understanding how they are coming in on board and how they can translate this into implementable projects.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think that was very insightful. Okay, Maria, just a quick question for you. what's the application process like to attend COP? I want to attend COP26. How do I go about that?
Sorry, now I could unmute myself. So there are various ways, and unfortunately at the moment, because we do not know if COP26 is going to happen, we do not know how many people will be able to attend. So they didn't yet give the quota, how normally it works. They will have the rooms, right? And then they say like, okay, we can accommodate 20,000 people. So we give out like 22,000 batches, right? But because they do not yet know this number, they do not yet even know if, for example, observers will be able to attend. So maybe there will be only negotiators and very small amount of observers. So we do not yet know how it works, but what we need now is also like what Elizabeth mentioned before, you either need to go through your government. So basically, if you're from Zimbabwe or from Switzerland, and it depends on the country's policies, they would maybe give young people a badge or not. And then the other way, like the observers, you go to the NGO who have the accreditation at the UNFCCC. You will find them all on the UNFCCC page. So you can basically go to Google, UNFCCC, admitted organizations, and then you find a list with all, I think, the 2,800 organizations around the world who are part or who are admitted at the UNFCCC, and they will then they can say like, I would like to have 15 batches, and then they say, and then the COP26 team said like, okay, well, you have only X amount of batches, and then they will allocate batches to the teams. Also, for example, sometimes universities have batches, so maybe you can also ask if your university has batches, and this is the only possibility how you get in. And I agree, especially if you're not part of a network, it's very, 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 very hard to get these batches. On the other hand, there are also like other conferences which are very like closely linked, like the conference of youth, also like the engagements around mod COPs, then Yango as well. They are doing a lot of activities to be more inclusive, because the COP itself is not an inclusive space. The COP itself is a very, very exclusive space where very little people can attend. Nevertheless, we would like to open this up and give more young people, especially, the opportunity to engage. And this space is like, for example, Yango. This is everyone can join. I shared the link before. I can also happily share it again. So all young people around the world can join and can participate. And I think this is the strength we are having, and we should not only focus on the COP, but also see how we can engage throughout the year, because especially for the upcoming COP, it's going to be very, very unlikely that a lot of people can unfortunately attend.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Elizabeth. What are the ways you think that we can improve meaningful youth participation in these processes?
Thank you so much. That is a very difficult question, but this is what we've been trying through the Children and Youth constituency, to engage young people so that they can participate and understand what the COP process is, what are negotiations. Maybe you might not want to be a negotiator, but you just want to understand the process. This is why we have a standalone constituency, which represents young people, to understand about the COP process. But also, before we reach to an international level, I would also advise young people from their respective countries. I mean, we have a lot of youth-led organizations that are working on climate-related issues. I would kindly advise each and every young person to be part of those organizations, because we all need to start from somewhere. Before you start representing other young people on an international platform, at least you need to have the experience, the national experience. At least you need to know how to interact with other young people, and also convince your government to support you, because this is where the whole catch is. In most maybe African countries, governments are really not on board in terms of supporting young people, but it can never be that easy. We all start from somewhere. Let's try by all means to convince them. Let's try by all means for them to understand that we are their best allies. We don't want to be part of the process so that we can be enemies. We can actually add value to the programs and the projects that the governments are doing. We can be their best allies. Even if we disagree, this can be done in a more proper way. I mean, of course, I know most young people from developed countries, they've been doing climate strikes. They've gone beyond trying to resonate with their governments. But here in Africa, we are still starting. We're still starting to resonate with our governments. So I would suggest that let's try by all means, let's push them, let's engage them. We can be their best allies. The climate crisis can actually be easy if we are all on the same table, all offering solutions to the climate crisis. The moment we want to work in silos, then it means, of course, we can have an impact, but it might not be that much. But if we combine all our efforts, the youth-led organizations, the government efforts, we can definitely win this crisis. So this is what I would try to encourage most young people from their nations. Let's create partnerships amongst ourselves as youth-led organizations. It's not a competition. Hello, the climate change is affecting everyone. We are not in competition. We are all addressing the same crisis. After we form collaborations and partnerships amongst ourselves, let's be coordinated and let's approach our governments. They should support us. They are mandated to support us. They have created policies. These policies, they are for us to implement as young people. We can actually add and see if we can go through our NDCs. We can actually suggest that, no, this is not ambitious enough. This is also a process of, adding input into the policy formulation process. So we can tackle this both ways by implementing the projects and by offering solutions into policy formulation. So this is what I would currently agree. Then after that, we can start advocating from a continental level and then advocating to an international level by the platforms that we have, MGCY, Children and Youth Constituents, a whole number of platforms that are there for young people to participate in.
All right, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Treya, Elizabeth mentioned about the need for us to build competence first at the local level, which is very important. So can you tell us, how do you think that we as individuals can affect change in the local level?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Kelo. Like as Elizabeth mentioned before also, what we can do is we can connect and collaborate. For that, Yongo is the best space, I say, and you can be in the mailing list of Yongo where you will know about different opportunities to work together and also different opportunities to talk even in the high level events. So that is what you can do. Even Yongo and UNEP, MGCY, there are platforms like that. And in local, that is how you connect with the not only the local and national level young peoples, but also with the international young peoples who are also doing the same thing as we are doing, right? So what we can do that, and in local level, especially, we can form a network of like-minded peoples who believes on our same mission. Even we can approach to those people who doesn't believe in climate change or something like that. We can educate them, and we can have a team to work on these issues, and we can identify the problems that is happening in that country. For example, in Nepal, like there now we are discussing about the destruction of the Surya range, which was just proposed by the latest budget. And right now we are having many discussions on that, whether Surya should be destructed or not. And also there is a controversial international airport project, Nisgar International Airport project. So that will be different for different countries and places. So what we can do is we can identify the problems that has been happening in that area, country, and we can work together on that. So that is how we amplify our work from local to the community level. And otherwise, there are also the individual actions that we can take, like being educated, being informed about climate change, and making others informed about climate change, reducing our greenhouse gas consumption, maybe by less shopping or by the reduction in the consumption of plastics, by planting trees, by working often. So these are also the individual actions that we can do. But the important is, while doing the individual actions, we should be able to connect it to the national level, and also how we amplify it to the international level is important.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Treya. And okay, Maria, I think this should be the last question. Can you tell us what you think success looks like, for an event like COP26, and what do you think is the biggest barrier to having a successful COP?
Yeah, thanks. I think this is a very, very important question. We have to really deal now with amongst us as constituencies, because we have been hearing last Friday, a week ago, from the COP26 team, how they envision to organize the COP. And basically it's all, I would say, castles in the air. Like, we want to have like a big party COP, but everyone is coming in person. We will have testing and screening and everything, but this is just like, this is not going to be possible. In my country, I have access to vaccines. Young people, but are globally the last ones to have access to vaccines. We know that so many countries, especially in the global south, the marginalized communities, the vulnerable communities, they're not having access to vaccines. They're not going to have access, especially vaccines for young people. So we will be, again, ones left out, left behind, sidelined. And I think it's very, very dangerous for the COP to not anticipate this and not take this into consideration when they're planning now the COP, because telling young people, especially the ones who do not have access to the vaccines, who do not have access to even get a visa to come to the UK, who do not have access to flights now going to the UK because of the pandemic, telling them like, oh, we will just have like, it's like normal, it's just like a little bit of testing and a little bit of screening. Like, this is not possible. And this is very, very dangerous, because this kind of give them the belief like they can still be like very inclusive, because they call themselves the most inclusive COP ever. But I have been working with them for 1.5 years, and unfortunately, like, all the signs are not in the right of an inclusive COP. Inclusivity means to work with youth-led self-governed spaces where young people can their own. We do not want to be cherry-picked by the old people. We do not need conferences organized by the old people, because we do not organize conferences for the old people. They can organize their own conferences, but give us the space where we can be ourselves, so we can come up with our own solutions and give us the opportunity to then interact with the ones who are taking the decision, because again, we are very often sidelined in the decision-making processes. But it's very important for young people to have their own spaces, their own safe spaces where we can come together and come up with our own solutions. And their space is younger, there's a space, mock-up, and there are many more of these spaces. But unfortunately, also COP26 was sidelining these spaces and creating their own exclusive spaces where they cherry-pick the people they would like to listen to, while sidelining the critical voices they actually would need to hear. But yeah, moving forward, what we can do, I mean, either COP is managing to be accessible and open for young people, I mean, for people all over the world, but especially for young Indigenous women from the global south. And if this is not possible, then unfortunately, I'm rather in favor of postponing it, because I do not think that the successful COP can be there without the participation of the most vulnerable of our community. And as already mentioned, we do not per se need a COP decision to advance on climate action. We have a Paris Agreement, we have everything, and just because we are lacking on Article 6, we can move ahead with the NDCs, we can have ambitious and bold plans, right? We do not need these decisions to advance on climate action. Of course, it would be nice. It would have been nice to already have this back at COP24. But yeah, an inclusive COP and a successful COP needs to be inclusive to all people, especially the marginalized communities.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maria. I think you've shared a lot of insight, and this has been, very helpful to not just myself but all attendees. And I want to thank you all for taking our time to join us this afternoon. Sorry, it's afternoon here in Nigeria, and to share your experiences. Just one last word. I would like all panelists to drop a word. What would you like to tell Ayok Sharma, the UK, and the Italian government and the UNCCC? What advice do you have? What do you like to tell them? I think Maria, I can start with you.
I will just repeat myself what I mentioned before. Young people need and want their independent youth spaces, and you have to face the reality what young people want, and do not cherry pick the ones you like to listen to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Elizabeth?
I would want to say that we are not your enemies, but we are your best allies. We can all tackle the climate crisis if we can all work together. So don't see us as enemies or threats. We can be your best allies.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Shreya?
Adding on to the points of Mary and Elizabeth, I want to say our message is simple. We know what the crisis is and what the problems are. I've already seen like what the world can do to lessen the impacts of COVID-19. Likewise, we can take the extraordinary measures to tackle climate change. So don't fail us again, don't fool us again. We are watching you. That is what I want to say to the leaders.
All right, thank you very much, Shreya. Thank you, Maria and Elizabeth, for taking out time to join this section and share your experiences. And to all our attendees, I hope you guys are as inspired and energized as me. Listening to these panelists has already very big lessons for me. I think there are many things I've learned from this call that I don't know before. And one of them is the subsidiary bodies have been receiving a series of emails from the younger mailing list, and I was wondering what this was. But it's, thank you for sharing. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Yogo. I think we'll be coming to the end of this section now, and I thank you